All right. Well, thank you for listening as well. Please subscribe to this podcast on all your favorite podcasting apps. Leave a 5-star review. It really does help as always. Anyways, thank you for listening to Digital Coffee Marketing Brew. Really do appreciate it. Thank you. All right. I'll just do this intro later because my dogs are going crazy. Hey guys, Brett Deister here. Sorry for no new episodes. I was on vacation and then I got sick for a couple weeks, which wasn't fun for me at all. But this is going to be the new intro for Digital Coffee Marketing Brew. I'm going to hopefully give you more of the rundown of it and what I hope you learn out of this episode. So first off, it is Michael Buckbee this week, and he is the co-founder of Knowatoa, a service that tracks brand visibility, ranking, and sentiment with AI search services like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Google Gemini. And we go through it all with AI and search, or SEO. What I hope you learn from it is that SEO traditionally is not dead yet, but it is good to learn for the future how to use AI search models and make sure that you are preparing for the future, because this is eventually going to be what it is, where people are going to be searching through AI. I use it for my regular search. When I just search something, I do see the Google AI search service, I guess, the top of it. So what I hope you learn from this is not to be afraid of AI, but to use it for your business to be successful in your business. So what I want you to put in the comments below is, what is one important thing you learned from this episode? All right, let's get on with the episode.
Hey, thank you so much for that introduction. So I write it up, and then when someone reads it back, I feel very, did I do that? Is that what happened? I mean, it's factual, but it's, yeah. So thank you very much for having me on the show. This is great. So
You're welcome. And the first question is, all my guests is, are you a coffee or tea drinker?
Oh, coffee. I drink, I wake up and I brew, I drink at least a pot of coffee a day, just to keep going. So, yeah.
All right. I mean, that's what, like 6 cups or something like that?
I have a fairly large mug here, so it's only really like 2, 3.
And I gave a brief summary of your expertise. Can you listeners a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, I think the most relevant thing is that I've worked in all those different places, really as the bridge between the marketing group and the technology group. I am a software developer, but I was director of demand generation at a public cybersecurity company for almost a decade. And I've done a lot of, content and paid marketing initiatives there. Never really on the agency side, but a lot of different iterations of a lot of different other pieces of it. So.
Got you. And how is AI search different from traditional search engines like Google? And why should marketers pay attention to tools like ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini, or Perplexity, or any of the other 50 million ones that are out there?
Well, I think there is a tendency, and I do this too, to sort of minimize the changes that are happening and to go. And I think an interesting thought experiment is just to pretend like, hey, say ChatGPT doesn't exist, say all these other new things don't exist, and it's still just Google. Even if it's just Google, Google is making so many changes that are radically different in response to all these companies that as marketers, we have to change our response, what we're doing, our content plans, our content strategy. And Google is making a lot of changes.
All right. I mean, even with their VO3 and their Flux, it seems like they're getting even better at their video content generative AI creation.
Yeah. So, there's really the generative stuff, which I think gets a lot of, public attention. And people are very fascinated with it. But day to day, search marketers and SEOs have been, plotting about how do I outrank my competition? How do I get my content to show up? How do I do the right things? And we are moving towards an era of ditching the 10 blue links, where you type, a query in, a keyword, and it comes back with 10 blue links. And then all of us, like I'm positive everyone who's listening to this has this very high level expertise of looking at the top couple, making some trust judgments, maybe opening them up real quick, and then sort of get a synthesis out of that of like, oh, here's the answer I was looking for. And the future, whether it's Google with AI overviews, whether it's their new AI mode, whether it's deep research, is really that there's going to be an intermediate in there. And if you go and use AI mode, which Google just last week made available to everybody, and the first thing it does when you put a query in is it says, hey, I'm going to go out and read these couple websites for you. And it reads half a dozen websites and then synthesizes an answer out of that to give to you. And then you just go right back and like answer a follow-up question. And the end result is that, for so long, as search marketers, you think of like a search journey where someone does an informational search and then like, oh, so that's what the parameters of this are. All right, well then give me one of the things there. And then, okay, now that I understand that and sort of the functions of it, like what's the best one in this category? Maybe 3 or 4 queries. And now all of that is happening inside of ChatGPT, or all of that is happening inside of AI overviews. And we're seeing traffic, especially for high volume, low intent informational queries, just drop away. And that's a new era we're moving into.
And so, you mentioned that your search results in AI tools sometimes hallucinate or provide inaccurate information. So how can brands mitigate the problems to protect or enhance their reputation through AI tools?
Yeah, well, on a purely defensive level, something that a customer said to me was ChatGPT is now our most popular and least well-trained representative of the company. And if you think about it, people are all the time asking ChatGPT questions that aren't necessarily like search questions, like keywords that we've wanted to rank for. What they're asking for is like basic business information, like, hey, I have a business in California. Do you do business in California? If ChatGPT says yes, and that's accurate, you win the customer. If they say no, you're not even on the list. And there's a million different facets of that. That's a lot more like business knowledge that you need to start trying to keep track of. And the other piece is really sentiment, which is that, if you could ask a question like, oh, what are some of the biggest banking systems, in the US, and like Wells Fargo would be in there. But even if it ranks well, anytime you ask ChatGPT about Wells Fargo, it says like, oh, well, they had the largest FTC fine ever. They're not a great company to do business with. You should do an ethical review of them before you open an account with them. And that's very different than traditional search, where traditional search, if you search for Wells Fargo, it doesn't come up with those news headlines. It comes up with, oh, the nearest ATM is like 6 blocks away, and here's how to open a checking account. And so, there's an expansion of what it means to do search marketing, or at least an expansion of responsibilities that we as marketers can take on that has a real impact that's way beyond, we drove a bunch of traffic that's low intent to the site.
And so, with the rise of AI-driven searches and what you said before, what aspects of traditional SEO are still critical, and what new strategies should marketers adopt to thrive in this evolving space?
So I think by far the number one skill that SEOs and search marketers bring is still empathy. And that's kind of seems weird in the state of AI and everything. But so much of, I think, modern content and search marketing is now about really understanding the intent of your customers. And it used to be just search intent. And now I think it has to be like one level up to be task intent. Like, what is it they're trying to do? And how can we help them? And where do we fit into this new search journey? And end of the day, if it happens to be they get most of their information not on your site, but from ChatGPT, and then at the end, ChatGPT says, "Whoa, but their company's great. You should go buy from them," and you get money from that customer or prospect, that still works. That still works. And we need to update, our strategies to handle that. And I think the easiest piece of this is that we should stop trying to rank for, these very high volume, low intent keywords and focus a lot more on the creation and distribution of middle and bottom of the funnel content, which is less satisfying in some ways, because it doesn't get the big numbers, but I think is a lot more satisfying because you can write as an actual human. all of us, I think, are sick of the recipes that have like a dissertation about their grad school in it before the apple pie recipe comes up, which was always an SEO optimization just to get more words in there about apple pie in the fall and, cinnamon when the professor gave you the idea. Who cares? So now we can actually write like a real conversational article, and, that counts in a way that we don't have to like artificially write for Google like we had to before. So.
And is it also more about the reputation of the brand too with AI searches? Because you said before, like the Wells Fargo thing of like, oh, look how terrible this company is. You're like, okay, yeah, we did mess up, but we didn't mess up forever, just that one time.
Well, I do feel Wells Fargo is a bit of an outlier, the largest FTC fine ever. Most companies hopefully won't have to deal with that, but so, it's the creation of the content and then it's the distribution. So, just imagine a brand, you have reviews, you have currently very siloed marketing channels of search and social content, and how we're seeing a different, web of how these things work. So, OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT, have a $13 billion relationship with Microsoft. Part of that is that Microsoft also owns LinkedIn. They also own GitHub. And part of that deal is that OpenAI has access to those platforms. So if you want to improve your reputation, if you want to do better for queries like, hey, who is the best in category? You can write that content that says, hey, we're the best. Here's the 6 reasons why. Here's a quote from our customer that says like, hey, they had messed up in the past, but I was shocked about how great the service was now. And you put that out as a LinkedIn article. In the past, SEOs always were very concerned about duplicate content penalties, about, is this going to take away my link juice? And I think the future is a lot more siteless, that there's siteless SEO where we're not so concerned about our site. We're just concerned about, is the message getting in the right place? And our responsibility is going to be to do that distribution in a much better way.
Over 1 billion users are using AI search tools. So what does this massive adoption mean for marketers over the next 5 years?
I think it really does mean, I think it means a couple different things. I think the biggest one is that it means suddenly all the search marketers are a lot more valuable than they were before. And the old world, the traditional search world, was really just Google. And the future, I'm not going to be able to predict the future perfectly. I don't think anybody is, but it certainly looks much more fractured than it is today. And AI adoption and how the AI tooling is working is just putting search into everything. And it's much less going to Google and doing a search. Here's an example. Amazon, there's always been a box at the top of Amazon where it says search for a product. And then recently they updated that to say search for a product or ask a question. And, you used to be able to go there and type in like coffee table. And now you can actually type coffee table for a small apartment that's, wood and that, has good reviews. And they are using the Claude LLM AI model to power that. And they have a buyer helper thing, shopping assistant called Rufus that is actually just Claude. Like you can go into the chat on Rufus, which is on the homepage of every Amazon query and on every product page, and ask like any of these weird off questions that you used to have to go to Google and ask. And that's just because search is now being embedded in there. Every WhatsApp user now has Meta's AI as a button on the home screen of WhatsApp. And, a lot of this stuff I think isn't getting the attention because it's dark. There's no analytics for it. No one has any idea. Are people just ignoring this button on the WhatsApp application? But it is 1 billion people. Like you think someone must have clicked on it, even if it just accidentally and like, oh, this is handy. I can, ask questions. So the future's a lot more fractured, which means I think there's a lot more responsibility on search marketers to make sure you show up correctly, that you're doing well against competitors, that your information's good. And I think in a world of a lot of change, I think I'm a positive in this when a lot of people are negative that AI is going to take all our jobs. I think it's going to be a lot of job security for SEOs and marketers for the next decade, just sorting out all of this for companies.
In your opinion, what's the highest ROI content marketing strategy right now, especially in the context of AI and digital marketing?
I think by far the easiest, cheapest thing to do right now is to make sure your site is not accidentally blocking any of these AI bots from indexing it. And, for decades, we have done all sorts of things to like massage and make it easy for Googlebot to read our sites, because it then puts the information in the index and then it gives it to users who then find us and then give us money. It is the exact same thing with all of these different AI services. But even the language we use for it, we're always like, oh, Googlebot indexes our site. But we say like, oh, ChatGPT is scraping our site. They're scraping our site to steal our content. And, I have spent a lot of time in my life writing a lot of words that have ended up on websites that are now being scraped or indexed. And I think that's just, and I'm not saying put everything into the AIs, but certainly your marketing site, make sure it's accessible. And I've seen a lot of places that are blocking. So we mentioned Googlebot, but Google now has an extended bot that you need to make sure you're letting through. OpenAI has 3 different bots, some for indexing, some for interactions. And if you aren't letting these in, you're just missing out on the foundation. So easy to verify, good starting point. And again, very high ROI. You don't even have to write anything. You just have to let it in. So.
All right. Hey, sometimes easier is the better.
Yeah.
And so what are the 3 most critical steps brands should take to prepare for the growing dominance of AI search tools?
I think 1, you should do a keyword audit. Like, hey, and, really try to pull out the intent of these and to say which of these make the most sense going forward, and where no one has an infinite budget. We can't write every article we want. So we have to put, get the most for our marketing dollar and, do that and have that reflected in your strategy. The next thing I'd say is that you do really want to start building bridges with the other groups you have. I know Digital Brew, it's, marketing and PR. We haven't mentioned PR yet, but I think that's a crucial bridge to have. I think PR is one of those things that's just going to become more and more valuable because it's going to be more and more indexable for all these different areas. And, this is self-serving, but, as a maker of tooling that helps like track all this, it is a lot to keep track of, even, like I mentioned, just is our site accessible by all of these different indexing bots? We track 24 different ones. We have a little free tool that lets people put in their site and just see like, can they reach our site? And that number changes every week because, Cloudflare gets put in place or someone puts a security plug in or someone does something goofy and it blocks it. It's just a lot to keep track of. So automation is very useful. And whether you use our tools or you use AI to make your own or you use something else, I do think it's good to start thinking at scale and automation for your processes.
And so what you're saying is PR people will finally be able to show their ROI when it comes to AI search because of context and communication will be more paramount than just keyword stuffing that used to be the thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's real interesting to me that so much of there's so many habits and I think assumptions that we have made as SEOs for, again, the last couple of decades that now just don't make anywhere the same amount of sense. Like, people focus a lot on like, page rank and domain rank, even though those have been out of, phase for quite a while. It's still something, you kind of think about like, better links from better sites. And a real question is, do any of the AI models care about that? Do they have even a sense of this? Or are they taking just like literal terabytes of text and smashing them together to try to come up with things? And it's a lot more like the latter than the former. And it's getting more complicated as, there's now a lot of interconnections between traditional search and AI search. But, it is a different way of thinking about rankings, and it's a different way of, doing content and trying to get customers.
And do you think even the content creation will be more heavily towards AI? I mean, we touched about it a little bit, but it seems like, if you look on X has like a plethora of AI stuff. YouTube kind of does, but they're a little bit more like, all right, you're going to have to tell me if this is AI or not. You can't just like not say anything. So are we going to see more of that? Because even Google is getting into the video creation through their own AI models, and we have Runway, we have Gling as well, and all that stuff.
Well, so we're trying to live this, so this is advice, but I believe in it enough to do it myself, which is we're really dividing content into faceless and face content. And so faceless is anything where if you read it, you don't know whose voice it is. It's the generic corporate voice that's very polished and has had Grammarly run over it 8 times. And that, you can't picture who wrote it. And I think the future is, beyond just having a brand voice, is to have actual people, as a representative. And so that's part of the reason I'm going on podcasts, so people hear my voice. We're investing more in video, and we're doing that across all the platforms. And, I have a weekly newsletter, and I very deliberately write it so that if you listen to this podcast and then you get the newsletter, you will obviously go like, oh, I don't know if I like it. I don't know if it's great, but I know Mike wrote this. And, I think that's the right investment to do for the future, where everything else is just going to be average AI stuff out there. And what's valuable is to have that point of view and to have that voice. So.
And how do you see AI fundamentally transforming how businesses approach marketing over the next decade beyond the search?
I think the opportunities of where to jump in to the tasks where people are trying to do things is really going to change. And I think in some areas there'll be a lot more opportunity, in some areas a lot less. I did mention I'm a software developer. If you are not a software developer, it is hard to understand how much software development has changed in the last 18 months with AI tooling, where I know many people who run technical sites about programming or how to use certain frameworks and stuff that have just seen their traffic tank and have seen just a huge rise in people and not even doing searches for any concepts anymore. They just literally just make modifications directly to the code. So they have Cursor, which is an AI assisted coding tool. There's Windsurf, there's all these different packages. And just within the actual document, you just highlight a section of it and you say, fix this, or you say, hey, add this or change this. So it takes out a lot of what used to be, okay, so how do I use this, API? And I go out and I search the documentation, or I say, what's the best way to do this? And there's a couple different things, and one of them might be paid, and I go to that. And, we're starting to see a lot of this stuff where, the product of a lot of the work that marketers do internally is, reporting and say, hey, here's the opportunities in this country, here's what we could do. And they're building that in a slideshow, and directly in the slideshow, you can type hey, give me the top 10 podcasts, and it will just make a list. And you can do that right now. And, Gemini is built into Google Docs. Notion has its own AI thing. And that's a weird way to sort of think about stuff, that this is just, ubiquitous across all these different services. And I'm, again, obviously self-serving, but I really think companies and brands need to get in now at the foundation of this, where, it's a lot easier, and to have, the data sets are only going to grow. And so to be in now, and to be part of that, I think is a very smart marketing move. So
what excites you the most about the future of AI search and marketing? And what role do you see yourself playing in this evolution?
There's that to be cursed to live in interesting times is, a saying. And I think these are definitely interesting times. I think this is the first real sea change we've seen in at the very least search marketing for a long time. And I think that's having ripple effects to lots of other areas. And I think with that comes a lot of opportunity and a lot of, opportunity, both like as a business trying to start a company to get going, as well as for, maybe there's been a competitor you've never been able to outrank. Now is maybe an opportunity. Now is a time to think, well, all this stuff that they have put so much inertia into and so much, infrastructure, that's moving the wrong direction. We're smaller, we're more nimble. We can switch to doing other stuff. So I think there's opportunities both at the individual business level as well as sort of the macro of the marketing community.
Yeah, I mean, it seems interesting. I'm more on the fence about it. I still use it, obviously, but I'm still way more on the fence only because of, I think prioritizing critical thinking is a little bit more important. I think people are giving a little too much to AI and not really critically thinking as much anymore. And this is me going like, I've got too much on my plate. So sometimes I do offload it to AI at times. So I'm not saying that I'm perfect at this either, but I do feel like I think we're trusting it a little too much, even though I do think it's a great tool.
Well, there's a part. So, I have kids, they use it for some of their homework, and I use it with them, and there's good and bad ways to do that. It's a tremendous teacher, to be able to take it. My daughter literally has written out a math problem, and it was an approach I wasn't familiar with. I took a picture of it, gave it to ChatGPT and said, explain how to do this, and read the handwriting, did it, said, oh, well, this is this sort of technique. Here's the first steps, and you 1 through 10, and like, oh, that makes sense. And you went through it. Amazing. And the bad way is to do that and then just write the answer out. But I think as marketers, we still need to bring our intelligence to the table. And I think what AI does is it raises the average level of all of this in the same way, like Grammarly. Not every piece of copy I've ever had has had a great copywriter go through it for grammar and spell check and tone. But now I use Grammarly and it's great. It, does all that stuff for me. And that raises the average quality level of it. And I think to my looking at what AI does, it's never going to replace brilliance, but it's going to just raise the average of everyone. And so it sounds like you're using this the right way, which is that you use it as a supplement, you use it as, a counterpoint, you use it to get rid of some of the drudgery of stuff. So I think it's great for those things. I agree entirely about not outsourcing critical thinking and intelligence though.
All right. And so people were listening to this episode and they're wondering, where can they find you online to learn more about you?
So I do have people email me directly. I'll give out my email, which is mike@knowatoa.com. It is a funny sort of name. It's KNOW AOTA, Knowatoa. And you can go to knowatoa.com, put your website in, and we actually do a deep classification for free of all the existing keywords your site ranks for, as well as give you for free sort of how you rank in the top sort of 10 questions for your niche in ChatGPT. And then if you want to do more and you want to do that, for weeks on end and get reports and lots of other stuff, that's all available as well. But love talking to people, and I genuinely hope that people don't despair over AI stuff, and that they think that this is a big opportunity for them and their careers in the future, because I do genuinely think that's the case. So,
and any final thoughts for the listeners?
I think the biggest one is just try these different services. Like there's so many different ones. There's a lot of free stuff. You don't need to spend a tremendous amount of money. You don't need to even buy, my stuff to get started. Go to ChatGPT, ask it about your company, ask it about yourself, see what it knows. And I think you'll find, even if it's not wrong information, it's not exactly how you want to be represented. And I think that's the first step, to just being aware of this and to start to make moves to improve things. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike, for joining Digital Coffee Marketing Brew and sharing your knowledge on AI, digital marketing, and search.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a great discussion. I do worry I spoke too much. Maybe I had too much coffee before coming on here. It was one of those days, but genuinely thankful for the opportunity to chat to you and your audience. So.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. All right, guys. So what did you think about the episode? Did you find anything important, or did you like anything about it? Or was there some aha moments within that episode? Let me know in the comments below, but also thank you for listening as always. And please subscribe to this podcast or subscribe to the YouTube, or if you're on Rumble as well. And join me next week as I talk with another great thought leader in the PR marketing industry. All right, guys, just learn how to do AI search, or learn how to get your website on AI search. Don't forget the traditional still. It's still very important. And see you next week. Later.